Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Craig Malkin, a clinical psychologist and lecturer for Harvard Medical School. I'm also the author of Rethinking Narcissism, which is devoted to helping you understand and cope with narcissism in all its forms and all your relationships. Today, I want to talk about subtle narcissism, what it is, what it looks like in relationships, and as always, what you can do if you see it happening in a relationship. If you like my videos, please consider turning on the notification bell so that you can see them when they come in. I love to have you back. Subtle narcissism is an idea that I introduce in Rethinking Narcissism in part to help people understand a confusion around another term, covert narcissism. If you've watched my videos or read anything I've written, including my book, you'll know that covert narcissism, which also goes by the name of hypersensitive, or my preference, introverted narcissism, because it correlates most strongly with introversion, is a form of narcissism where the grandiosity, that inflated sense of uniqueness or specialness, is what's hidden. And on the outside, the person is insecure, shy, often socially anxious. This is what covert narcissism is, and this is how it's been researched from the beginning when it was introduced by a number of psychologists and researchers, one of whom is a guy named Paul Wink, who looked at it as a form called vulnerable narcissism, which I'm sure you've also heard, but he used it interchangeably with covert narcissism. That is what covert narcissism is. You may have heard it tossed about as though what it means is somebody who starts out and they seem like a nice or sensitive person, and then things turn nasty. That, especially if they are charismatic or seem openly nice, that is not covert narcissism. What it might be is what I call subtle narcissism. And if you want to understand what subtle narcissism is, just remember that not just in my perspective, but across the research, narcissism exists on a spectrum. And if you think of it on a spectrum from 0, no narcissism, all the way to 10, extreme narcissism, then it becomes apparent that people can be just short of 10. They can be high, elevated, but not all the way up to 10. Around 7 or 8 on that spectrum. And around 7 or 8 on the spectrum, you can kind of think of it using the metaphor of addictions. This is somebody who occasionally drinks too much, but they don't get blackout drunk, and they don't get drunk every day, and they don't need to drink in the morning to feel better from their withdrawal symptoms. They just occasionally overdo it. And that can happen with narcissism too, especially people around 7 or 8 on the spectrum, where these are people who, for the most part, hum along just fine in relationships with you or anyone else, friends, at work. And unbeknownst to you, they're constantly comparing themselves to others. I shouldn't say unbeknownst to you, because sometimes they might talk openly about it. I mean, little things leak out, like concerns about how they do compared to other people at work. And what you don't realize is they're often thinking about where they stand on a particular metric compared to other people, so much so that it interferes or creates noise, makes it hard for them to pay attention to other people. This is where occasionally they can seem like bad listeners, but for the most part, this is not somebody who's abusive or aggressive. It's just, as I said, sometimes they seem like bad listeners. They're particularly preoccupied with themselves and these insecurities. That what happens is that even though they're humming along for a little while, something changes. Maybe there's a bigger challenge at work. They got negative feedback. They had a breakup, if it's not somebody you're dating, but instead it's a friend. And they experience what's called the entitlement surge. And this is where that metaphor of habit and addiction really comes in handy. So now suddenly, just like the usually affable person who gets drunk now and then, now they're going on a bender. And in this case, the bender is they experience an entitlement surge. And remember, entitlement is acting as though the world owes us or should bend to our will. It's a way of getting our needs met without having to ask for anything. That is, if you just have to do things for me, I don't have to risk the vulnerability of being rejected. That's really what entitlement in narcissism is for. People with subtle narcissism, this is somebody who you started dating them and everything seemed more or less okay. And what happens is, as the relationship goes on, everybody has insecurities. Everybody wonders, how much does the person I'm seeing like me, or are they really going to stick around for me? And that grows naturally as a relationship moves along. In the case of subtle narcissism, precisely because they don't trust that they are safe in other people's hands, that they can be connected in mutual caring and emotionally deep ways. So precisely because somebody who struggles with subtle narcissism, at their core, they don't really trust that people will be there for them with push come to shove when they are feeling vulnerable, sad, scared, lonely, blue. You've heard me talk about this before. This is what attachment insecurity is, and narcissism is a way of coping with attachment insecurity. So as soon as those normal insecurities come up, the problem is you have this man or woman that you were seeing and they seemed really nice or caring, and now suddenly they're acting very bristly if you miss a word that they say, if you don't fully understand immediately what it is that they were trying to tell you. There's no effort or possibility of repair or talking about it again. That's one example. Or this is somebody that you're living with. They come home and they expect you to do things for them, especially maybe listen to their tirade about work and things that are going on at work. They don't ask for anything, maybe don't even ask about how your day was. Again, it seems very self-involved in a way that you hadn't seen before. And this can get worse and worse. Maybe I'll talk about that later, because as entitlement goes up, exploitation goes with it. For most people with subtle narcissism, they might slide back down and hover around that sort of elevated but not up at a 10 that they usually are. But for many, what happens is you have this period in the relationship where they just seem demanding and bristly. Again, it can get worse, but not yet abusive, but maybe more dismissive or arrogant. But overall, like this feeling that things should revolve around them, it goes up. That is the entitlement surge. What do you do when you see it? Well, really, as with most of the things I talk about here, you want to see if that, to go back to the metaphor of addiction, that overindulging in that habit, if they can get it back under control. And remember, the underlying problem is they're feeling insecure in some way. That's what causes the entitlement surge. They are trying to sustain their sense of value or worth by feeling special instead of turning to you. And this leads to a natural way of testing out that's healthier for you, even if it's not received well. That's a common theme in what I share with you as well. It's better for you to test out whether or not they can return to a healthier form of relating. In the case of entitlement surge, there is a kind of projection going on there where you feel like you're falling short in some way. If your partner is being bristly about, dinner, as though somehow you should be the one who provides dinner and they never acted that way before, or the house should be cleaned, as though somehow that's something that falls only to you, or you should just be at their beck and call when they are upset about something at work, but it's not in a vulnerable way. All of those things are a way of disowning for somebody with subtle narcissism, the feeling that they're falling short in some way, inadequate. It's that sense of insecurity coming out. So one simple way is from a vulnerable place. Just say something like, I care about you. I see that you're a lot more on edge lately, and I'm just getting the sense that you're feeling like you're not doing as well as you would like to at work. I mean, is that what's going on? Are you feeling more unsure of yourself lately at work? Or, if it's not a work-related thing, just something that happens in the relationship, are you, unsure of where things are going for us? Do you have some concerns about it? I'm just picking up on some feeling of uncertainty, right? So what you're doing is that you're taking that projected feeling like you're doing something wrong, or you're falling short in some way, or you start to feel uncertain about yourself, and you're kind of handing it back, but in a vulnerable way where the person can, if they can come back to a healthy way of relating, can actually have a conversation about it. I want to caution you, this is not about fixing a relationship or getting someone to change. It's an invitation to a healthier way of relating. It's drawn from an idea I call an empathy prompt. Maybe I'll do a follow-up on that. But even what I'm saying is sort of modeled on that. what you're trying to do is just test the waters and see, can they come back and relate to you in a mutually caring and connected way, and set aside the entitlement? Can they come back down the spectrum? Because that's really what you're looking for. But this also explains, right, if they can't do it, um, if things get worse, that is why they were already struggling internally with their insecurities by occasionally overindulging in the drive to feel special, exceptional, unique, to feel good about themselves. And then it starts to run rampant. But again, if you want to see if there's any flexibility, this is an easy way to do it. And if it doesn't go well, that is not on you. It is information. All that you should have to do is to check in with somebody about if there's some kind of vulnerability that they're feeling. And if it's not received or it makes things worse, that is information. So I hope you found that helpful. If you like it, please give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to comment so I can develop more ideas and share them with you like this. And I look forward to sharing more.